Waiters waitresses of Reddit, what's the most awkward first date you had to witness firsthand? The date I saw started off great. I was playing in a band at a small club. There were about 30 people in the club. A couple who had been sitting close together in a corner booth disappeared together into one of the bathrooms. In between songs, when it was quiet in the club, the bartender yells, "They better not be in there fucking on my sink." The whole place turns and stares at the bathroom door, and as we're staring, the couple emerges, smiling at first. Then they look around, see everybody staring at them, and their faces turn a deep color of shame. They quickly paid their bill and left. Once, as a high school teenager, while waiting tables at a now defunct Mexican restaurant chain, think Applebee's, but tacos, a first date came in. They seemed unable to converse. It was super awkward. Painful to watch. Well, at one point the woman asked for a refill of her tea. I dutifully went and got the pitcher and came back to fill her glass. While pouring, I literally dropped the entire pitcher, a full gallon, of sweet, sticky tea directly onto her. It went down her shirt. Her skirt. It was everywhere. She was completely and utterly soaked. My newly blossoming career as a server flashed before my incredibly stoned eyes. I apologized profusely. I brought her out like 4,000 napkins. Her date was dumbfounded and probably didn't think this could get worse, but here we are. Well, she cleaned up the best she could. And they ate their meals. And, magically, they began talking. They started looking at each other like a new couple looks at each other. They laughed, they enjoyed their shitty food, she dried out. They left the restaurant an hour later, with her arm in his. They gave me the biggest tip I had ever gotten. I got $20 on a $20 bill, in 1996. Somehow, my idiotic, hi, blunder, turned the worst first date ever into the best first date ever. I like to imagine them now as happily married, parents of 7 lovely children, who love telling the story of the moron who poured an entire gallon of tea on her, 25 years ago. I legit saw the guy try to roofie the girl. Like not even trying to be hidden about it. He did it right in front of me. The girl went to the bathroom and I was cleaning the table next to them. I saw him take the powder out and slip it inside the drink. Another thing too, it was a pizza place. Who tries to roofie someone in a pizza place? Edit, yes, I called the cops. Jesus, I like chaos but I'm not an animal. Did you let the girl know? Yeah, I let the girl know, and then I called the cops. He was arrested. I used to work at a Mexican restaurant and one year when I was working on Valentine's I was subject to one of the weirdest first dates ever. A couple walks in. She is dressed to the nines, like she's ready to hit up a club. He is dressed more casually, in jeans and a button-down. Our hostess seats them and when I go to greet them the man announces that this is their very first date. The lady looks less than impressed and gives a small smile, more like a grimace. They order drinks and as I'm watching their table you can tell that the date is not going well. The guy is talking animatedly and the girl is glancing around like she'd rather be anywhere else. I head over to take their order and it's clear that I've interrupted something. The guy looks a little embarrassed and sad and the girl looks pissed off. He orders his meal and she flippantly orders something, seafood enchiladas, without really looking at the menu. She tosses her menu in my direction and sucks down the rest of her drink. Okay then. I deliver their food and go back behind the counter to continue rolling silverware and watching my tables. They dig in and the man seems to be enjoying his food, his date looks disgusted and is flicking bits of her dinner around the table floor. I walk over to check in and see if she maybe wants to order something else. I get to the table to ask how everything is and she gets up, screams that her food is disgusting, and goes off about how shitty this date was. She started yelling at him about how he should have ordered for her, how dare he take her to such a low-class place, she was so done with this, blah blah blah. She shoves her plate away, gets up, and storms out of the restaurant. The dude is mortified. I tell him I'll be right back with the bill and would he like his food boxed up? This fucking guy shakes his head, pulls her plate towards him, and says nope, he's fine to continue eating the meals he's paid for. He stayed for the duration of his meal. I never did find out what happened to the lady. We talked about that incident for weeks after. A teenage couple sharing an ice cream and holding hands very awkwardly. After they finished the ice cream they kept talking about their very adventurous sexual fantasies. They were around 14 years old. Super awkward to have to interrupt them to ask if they want anything else. My sexual fantasy when I was 14 was holding hands. 25 year, it still is. The guy's card declines. I didn't want to embarrass him so I waved him over near the credit card machine so it would look like he needed to go to the bathroom. He told me to try it again and I assumed he was going to move money over on his app. He went back to his date. Card declines again. The machine prints a receipt that states the reason for decline: insufficient funds. I keep trying 4 more times. I go over to the table and say, "I'm having an issue with the card, might be our machine, do you have another?" I walk away with the new card, and it declines. I wave him over, he gets up angrily, and I'm guessing now the date has caught on. He proceeds to berate me, saying that it must be our machines because he knows he has money. He starts making fun of me, questioning if I know what I'm doing. He is doing this in front of his date, I'm guessing to save face, gives me another card. Declined, the date pays. Not a first date, but very awkward. Guy comes in with an escort and drops a good amount of money on booze at the bar. Then she leaves a few hours later, and he informs us that his wife is on her way to meet him for dinner and tips us an extra $200 to keep our mouths shut. Keeping it classy. A couple was shown to their table, and the guy was on the phone the entire time. I normally wait until guests are off their phones to give my spiel, the specials, and such, and take a drink order, but he didn't show any sign of getting off the phone. I take the order, which the guy just holds his hand over the phone, talks over his date. When I come back, she attempts to order an app, our house specialty, and he tries to say the portions are large enough without. She orders the zucchini anyway. I get the dinner order, and bring out the app. At this point, I hadn't been to the table when he hadn't been on the phone. While I was putting together the salad, the woman comes out to the lobby and asks to get her meal packed up. She ended up paying her half of the bill and ducking out. She told me this was their first date and she was set up by a soon-to-be former friend. Said she was going to be calling her friend as she walked out. When I brought the guy's meal to him, he asked where her dinner was and I told him what happened. He really thought she was in the bathroom. Not a first date, but when I first started bartending I had a woman who was very obviously stood up. She got there, ordered a drink, and would look around every once in a while. I saw her use her phone a couple times and her mood just got sadder until she finally put her phone upside down on the bar and ordered food an hour later. I wiped what I could off her bill, then paid the rest myself, told her it was on the house. In my career, it's happened 2 more times, once with another woman and once with a guy. I did the same thing. Nothing sucks more than eating alone and defeated. Not a waiter but a girl I met on a dating app a couple years back told me this guy, who she also met on said dating app, set a date at this weird unknown ghetto bar in our town, and while the place seemed bad, the guy seemed cool, so she ended up going. She gets there early and sits down at the table. Guy isn't there yet. She notices there are 2 other girls, also alone and on their phone, sitting separately. As the time goes on, more and more single girls start walking in and sitting alone. At this point, the guy is late by 15 minutes. After 30 minutes, she stands up and asks one of the girls, "Sorry, are you waiting for Alex?" The girl surprisingly says yeah. Another one must have heard the conversation because she stood up and said, "Hey, I'm also waiting for Alex." Turns out Alex had managed to invite 12 girls at the same bar at the same time. Clearly as a prank. They ended up all sitting together and chatting and having drinks. Apparently, it was a great night and most of them kept in touch. 3 of them even went on vacation together in Europe. I'll always wonder if Alex, or whatever his real name was there to notice it all, or knows how his prank ended up turning. I worked as a barista at a coffee shop with a dishwashing sink that brought you face to face with whoever was sitting at the coffee bar across from you. For some reason, so many people chose this spot for their first dates, so I would have to wash dishes and pretend I wasn't literally on the date with them. One time a person I knew was on their first date with someone and chose that cursed seat across for the dishwashing sink. Because we knew each other, we chatted a little bit, and then as if a partition raised between us, they began their date, but I still had dishes to do, so fucking uncomfortable. I was the one on the first date. Went to a bar with this guy, our waitress came up and immediately recognized him, was super friendly, took our orders, and left. While she was gone he told me they used to date. The rest of the night they openly flirted with each other. There was no second date. The guy starts talking about how nice it is in the modern day that you can just date without labels. Woman, in suspiciously chipper voice, responds that sometimes labels are really helpful in defining the boundaries of the relationship. Man, very upbeat, replies that sometimes it's nice just to enjoy your time with someone without having to define anything. It was so hard to listen to. Just saw one on Valentine's Day. The date seemed to be going very well, actually, not awkward at all. They talked non-stop. No lulls in conversation, they were laughing, carrying on, and just generally having a good time. In fact, another server and I were laughing about how obnoxiously loud they were. Then I heard the gentleman say, "And obviously, you're not still married, right?" "Please tell me you're not still married," she said. "Well, actually," and then things got very uncomfortable. It must not have been a deal breaker because they stayed at the restaurant another hour until we closed, but they were very quiet for the rest of the night, hardly spoke to each other at all. I worked at a higher-end restaurant as a busser for a while, and eventually was given a chance to serve in the bar area while a jazz band played. Most of the tables were just drinks and appetizers. My first shift, a woman in her 40s or 50s came in with a tall, dark, and handsome guy no older than 30. Nothing wrong with that in my eyes, but all of my interaction with him was the woman talking down to me on some sort of power trip, maybe to prove to her guy that she's an alpha female or something. Didn't know, and her ordering everything for her date. They had cocktails, ordered a bottle of wine, and had a couple entrees. She ordered ahi tuna, rare. She was very insistent on the rare, so much so that I put blue rare into the computer so everything would be fine. She sent back 4 separate plates, all too well done, to the absolute horror of her date. I informed her after the second that they wouldn't be taken off her bill, and she scoffed and made some comment about how she's loaded and it doesn't matter. After the 4 plates, she sent the last one back and asked for a shrimp cocktail instead. I left them to enjoy the music, brought the check, and when I came back to pick it up, her date was gone, and I don't mean, went to the bathroom or went for a smoke. All of his things were gone and he was nowhere to be seen for 30 minutes. She apologized to me and asked if I could take the ahi tuna, $45 each, off of her bill. Told her to pound dirt. Not really, but my manager did. Next day she wrote a 500-word review about me, using my first name, on the restaurant's Facebook page. My boss printed it out, framed it, and I still have it today. Not a first date, but a guy decided to propose to a stripper from Scores, high-end joint in NYC. She was stunning. Also in fine dining, he gets on one knee and pops the question and she goes out loud, "Are you fucking kidding me?" He got up and asked for the check. Got a story? Share it with us in the comments section.